He had spent the entire week moving from one meeting to another, always on calls and responding to emails that never seemed to end. The life of a CEO was full of decisions and responsibilities, and sometimes it was easy to forget that even someone with his position needed a break. This evening, he decided, would be different. He would go to a nice restaurant, order a steak, and enjoy a quiet meal by himself. There was no agenda, no meetings, no phone calls to answer. Just a moment to breathe and enjoy something simple. The restaurant he chose was a well-known place in the city. It was not flashy, but had a certain elegance that made anyone feel comfortable. The soft lighting, the smell of fresh food, and the faint sound of jazz playing in the background created a calming atmosphere. As he walked through the entrance, he felt a sense of relief. This was a place where he could forget the stress of work for a while. The host greeted him warmly and led him to a table by the window. From this spot, he could see the lights of the city while still enjoying the privacy of his own space. As he settled into the chair, he took a moment to observe everything around him. The restaurant was busy but not crowded, and each table had its own little bubble of conversation. He noticed a family sharing a laugh, a couple quietly talking, and a small group celebrating what seemed like a promotion or a birthday. The warmth of the room reminded him that there was life outside his office, life that didn't revolve around profits or deadlines. For the first time that week, he allowed himself to relax. Soon, a waitress approached his table. She moved with a mix of confidence and caution, clearly aware that he was an important guest. Her uniform was crisp and her smile was genuine, but there was a subtle nervousness in her eyes. He greeted her with a nod and a polite smile. She handed him the menu and waited patiently while he scanned the options. He decided on a prime-cut steak, medium rare, with a side of roasted vegetables and mashed potatoes. He also asked for a glass of the restaurant's recommended red wine. The waitress nodded and repeated his order to ensure she had it right, then walked away gracefully. As he waited for his meal, he allowed himself to notice the little details around him. The way the silverware was arranged perfectly on each table, the soft hum of conversation, the gentle clinking of glasses. He thought about how much work went into creating an experience like this for every guest. It reminded him of the effort he put into his own company, making sure every part worked smoothly even when no one noticed the effort behind it. There was something satisfying in knowing that excellence mattered, whether it was a 5-star meal or a successful business. Minutes later, the waitress returned, carrying his steak with care. The aroma made him pause for a moment and appreciate the simple pleasure of food done well. She set the plate in front of him and poured the wine with precision. As she did, she offered a polite, "Enjoy your meal." He thanked her, feeling a sense of warmth at the small act of kindness. It was a reminder that no matter how important one might be, the human touch always mattered. He took his first bite, and it was exactly as he hoped. The steak was tender, juicy, and full of flavor. Each bite was a reminder that sometimes it was the small things that brought the most satisfaction. The roasted vegetables were perfectly cooked, and the mashed potatoes were creamy and comforting. With every sip of wine, he felt more relaxed, more present. For a moment, he forgot the pressures of his role and simply enjoyed being in the moment. As he continued eating, he noticed the waitress glancing at him occasionally. At first, he thought it was just part of her job, making sure he had everything he needed. But there was something different in her gaze, a mix of curiosity and respect. He wondered what she might be thinking. Perhaps she noticed him from somewhere else, or maybe she had seen him on the news or in an article. He didn't know, but he appreciated the attention was thoughtful, not intrusive. The conversation between them was minimal, just polite exchanges here and there, but there was an unspoken understanding forming. He was a guest, she was the server, but there was a shared acknowledgement of each other's presence. In a world where people often rushed past one another, these moments of recognition felt rare and valuable. Finishing the last bites of his steak, he leaned back slightly, feeling satisfied and content. The evening had given him more than just a meal. It had given him a moment of peace. He looked around the room again, noticing the details he had missed before. The way the candlelight flickered, casting soft shadows across the walls, the subtle smile of another server passing by, the gentle laughter from a nearby table. Life was moving around him, but for once he wasn't just observing, he was part of it. The waitress returned to his table carrying the bill. He thanked her and reached for it, noticing something unusual. There were words written at the bottom, not printed but handwritten. He paused, a flicker of curiosity crossing his mind. He had seen plenty of bills in his life, but this one seemed different. There was an effort, a personal touch that made him stop and look more closely. The writing was neat and careful, and it seemed to carry meaning beyond a simple transaction. He read the words slowly, taking in each letter, each thought expressed. It wasn't about the meal or the service. It was something deeper, something personal. It left him momentarily speechless. The waitress stood quietly nearby, waiting for his reaction, but giving him the space to process what he was seeing. He felt a mix of surprise, admiration, and a quiet appreciation for the gesture. In that moment, he realized that even the simplest actions could carry tremendous weight. A note, a kind word, or a gesture of thoughtfulness could leave a lasting impression, far beyond what anyone might expect. He reflected on how often he had been focused on results, numbers, and schedules, and how little attention he sometimes paid to these small but powerful acts. It was a gentle reminder that life was made of moments like this. Moments where human connection mattered more than anything else. He folded the bill carefully and looked at the waitress, a smile of genuine gratitude forming on his face. She returned it, equally grateful for the acknowledgement. No words were needed beyond what had already been shared through the simple exchange. The room felt warmer, the evening felt richer, and he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment he hadn't anticipated when he walked in. As he gathered his belongings and prepared to leave, he took one last look around the restaurant. He saw the staff moving efficiently, the guests enjoying their meals, and the subtle beauty of a place designed to make people feel welcome. He felt a sense of connection, not just to the waitress, but to the life around him. For a few hours, he had stepped away from the world of power and responsibility, and entered a space where kindness and human gestures reigned. It was a moment he would remember, a story he would carry with him, and an experience that would quietly influence how he approached his life and work in the days to come. After placing his order, he leaned back slightly, feeling the soft leather of the chair and the warmth of the dim lights above. The gentle hum of conversation and soft music in the background made the moment feel almost like a pause from reality. He looked around the restaurant more closely now, observing the interactions at other tables. There was a couple laughing over shared stories, a small group quietly celebrating an achievement, and a family enjoying their evening together. He realized how rare it was to just sit and watch life unfold without a rush to participate. The waitress returned after a few minutes with a small bowl of warm bread and butter. She placed it on the table and smiled politely. He thanked her, appreciating the subtle way she made the moment more pleasant. She asked if he would like water while he waited for his meal, and he nodded. Her attentiveness was clear, but it wasn't overbearing. She moved with a quiet confidence, aware of his presence but respectful of his space. He noticed the way she handled every detail, refilling glasses without interrupting the conversation at other tables, clearing dishes efficiently and always wearing a smile that seemed genuine. Even though she was working hard, there was a grace to her movement, a rhythm that made everything in the room feel smoother. Watching her, he realized how much effort went into making a dining experience perfect, something he often took for granted in his own life. When she returned to check on his table, she asked if he had any preferences for how his steak should be cooked. He appreciated that she didn't assume anything, giving him the choice and making him feel that his opinion mattered. He repeated his request for a medium rare steak, and she nodded, jotting it down carefully. The moment felt ordinary, yet he couldn't help but notice the care in her actions. It made him reflect on the importance of small gestures in daily life. As he waited, he thought about his week. The endless meetings, the constant phone calls, and the pressure to make decisions had worn him down. But here, in this calm environment, he felt a sense of release. He realized that sometimes stepping away from responsibilities, even for a short time, could recharge a person more than anything else. This meal was not just about eating. It was about reclaiming a piece of himself that often got lost in work. The waitress returned again, this time to place a small note on the table. He glanced at it, expecting perhaps a menu suggestion or a polite message. Instead, it was a simple line wishing him a pleasant meal. The handwritten words, though short, carried sincerity. He smiled quietly to himself, acknowledging that someone had taken the time to add a personal touch to his evening. It was a small act, Yet it made him feel seen, appreciated in a way that numbers and titles never could. When his meal finally arrived, the presentation was immaculate. The steak was cooked exactly as requested, the vegetables arranged neatly, and the mashed potatoes perfectly creamy. The waitress set the plate down with care and poured the wine, ensuring not a drop was spilled. She gave a polite "enjoy your meal" before stepping back to let him begin. He took a deep breath, savoring the aroma and the anticipation of the first bite. As he ate, he noticed her glancing at him occasionally, but always respectfully. There was curiosity in her eyes, not prying but observant. He wondered if she recognized him or simply appreciated the opportunity to serve someone who carried himself with dignity. Either way, it felt like an unspoken connection was forming between them, something small but meaningful. He had never thought much about these interactions in the past, but now he realized how powerful they could be. Each bite of steak was a reminder of the simple joys that life offered, often overlooked in the rush of ambition. He thought about how little time he had allowed himself to enjoy such moments. The combination of taste, ambiance, and human interaction created a rare experience of contentment. He noticed the effort of the kitchen staff in every element of the meal, and appreciated how everyone played a part in creating this evening. The waitress returned once more, checking to see if he needed anything else. He asked for a small dessert, just enough to conclude the meal without feeling heavy. She recommended a chocolate delicacy from the specials, and he agreed. While he waited, they exchanged a few words. Light conversation about the weather and the city, polite but genuine. Even in these short exchanges, he felt a warmth that was often missing from professional interactions. When the dessert arrived, it was presented beautifully, almost like a piece of art. He took a moment to appreciate the detail before taking a bite. The flavors were rich and comforting, rounding out the meal perfectly. As he enjoyed the last part of his dinner, he thought about how rare it was to feel truly cared for in such a simple, authentic way. The experience wasn't about grandeur or luxury, but about attention, respect, and human connection. The waitress came by to clear the dessert plate, and he thanked her for the recommendation. She smiled and asked if he would like the check. He nodded and reached for it, noticing a handwritten note at the bottom. At first he thought it might be a standard thank you, but as he read it, he realized it was something personal, something unexpected. The words were kind, thoughtful, and sincere, expressing admiration not for his wealth or status, but for who he was as a person. He felt a wave of surprise and emotion. It was rare to receive such a message from someone he had never met before, someone in a completely different position in life. He looked up at the waitress, who was quietly waiting, giving him the space to process the note. Her eyes held a hint of nervousness, but also a quiet pride in having communicated something meaningful. He nodded slightly, acknowledging the gesture without needing words. In that moment, he realized that life was full of small but powerful acts that could change someone's day, or even their perspective. A handwritten note, a smile, a genuine moment of attention. These things carried weight far beyond what he had expected. It reminded him that connections between people, no matter how brief, could leave lasting impressions. He folded the bill carefully, savoring the memory of the note and the experience of the evening. The room felt warmer, more alive, not just because of the lights or the music, but because of the human interaction that had made him feel recognized and appreciated. It was a lesson in humility and kindness, one that he knew would stay with him. As he stood to leave, he felt a sense of gratitude for the waitress and the staff. He realized that success and recognition were important, but they didn't replace the value of simple human gestures. The evening had reminded him of the beauty of everyday life, the small moments that often went unnoticed but could have a profound impact. He left the restaurant feeling lighter, more connected to the world around him, and quietly inspired to carry this experience into his own actions and interactions in the future. The meal had been everything he had hoped for. Each bite of steak, each sip of wine, and every small detail from the restaurant staff had come together to create a perfect experience. He sat back for a moment, letting the flavors settle, and enjoying the calm that had settled over him. The soft glow of the lights, the faint music in the background, and the gentle hum of conversation all combined to make the evening feel special, almost magical. When the waitress returned with the bill, he took it casually, expecting the usual printed receipt and nothing more. But as he looked down, his eyes caught sight of handwriting at the bottom of the page. He paused, intrigued. It wasn't just a signature or a thank you. These were words carefully written as if meant only for him. His curiosity grew. He looked closer, trying to make out each word, feeling a flutter of emotion he didn't anticipate. The note was simple yet powerful. It spoke of appreciation, respect, and a recognition that went beyond money or status. The waitress wrote that she admired his dedication, his presence, and the way he carried himself. She didn't know him personally, but her words conveyed a genuine respect for what she had observed, a silent acknowledgement of the man behind the title. It was unexpected, and it left him momentarily speechless. He sat there holding the bill, reading and rereading the note. Each time, the words seemed to sink deeper, making him reflect on how little attention he sometimes paid to the simple acts of human connection. The message was not about his achievements or wealth, but about the impression he made simply by being himself. It was a reminder that every interaction, no matter how brief, had the potential to touch someone in a meaningful way. Looking up, he noticed the waitress standing quietly a few steps away, giving him space but watching for his reaction. Her eyes held a hint of nervousness but also a quiet pride. He realized that this small act of writing a note had required courage. In a world where people often rushed past one another without a second thought, she had taken the time to express something sincere. He felt a deep respect for her in return, recognizing that her gesture carried more meaning than most people realized. He thought about how rare it was to receive such genuine recognition. In his life, he had been surrounded by people who focused on results, numbers, and appearances. Compliments were often empty, and appreciation was measured in transactions rather than sincerity. This note, however, was different. It was a human connection, small but profound, and it reminded him of the value of paying attention to the people around him. He folded the bill carefully, not wanting to crumple the delicate words, and looked up at the waitress again. He gave her a small, genuine smile, one that said more than words ever could. She returned it, her expression softening with relief and satisfaction. In that simple exchange, there was a mutual understanding, an acknowledgement of the humanity that existed between them, a fleeting but meaningful moment of connection. As he prepared to leave, he couldn't help but reflect on the contrast between his usual life and this evening. At work, decisions were often made with efficiency in mind, leaving little room for personal touches or small gestures. But here in this restaurant, he experienced something different, something real. It was a reminder that life wasn't just about accomplishments or status, but also about the way people treated one another, the moments of kindness that could leave lasting impressions. Walking to the door, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. The note had touched him in a way that was hard to explain, a mixture of gratitude, surprise, and humility. It reminded him that even the smallest gestures could carry immense significance. He thought about the power of recognition, the importance of noticing the humanity in others, and how often he himself might have missed opportunities to make someone feel valued. The evening air greeted him as he stepped outside, cool and fresh. The city lights sparkled around him, but his mind was still on the note, the words carefully chosen and the courage it had taken to write them. He realized that this single moment, small and quiet, had created a memory that would stay with him far longer than most business achievements or accolades. It was a human experience, simple yet profound, and it carried a lesson he intended to remember. He walked slowly down the street, thinking about how he could carry this experience into his own life. Perhaps it was a reminder to pause, to acknowledge the efforts of those around him, or to take a moment to connect genuinely with others. The note had been written without expectation of reward, without any desire for recognition, yet it had left a mark on him that was far more powerful than anything transactional. As he reached his car, he glanced back at the restaurant, feeling a quiet gratitude for the evening and for the unexpected message that had changed the tone of his day. It was a story he knew he would share someday, not to boast but to illustrate the power of human connection. He understood now that success, while important, was not measured solely in numbers or accomplishments, but in the relationships and interactions that shaped life in subtle, meaningful ways. He opened the door to his car and placed the note carefully on the passenger seat. The gesture felt symbolic, a way to honor the moment and the person who had created it. As he drove home, he replayed the scene in his mind, appreciating the courage and sincerity of the waitress. It had been a simple act, yet it had transformed an ordinary evening into a memorable one. By the time he reached home, the lesson of the night had settled into him. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, not in terms of work, but in how he interacted with the world. The note had reminded him of the importance of kindness, recognition, and the subtle ways people could touch one another's lives. He knew that in the future, he would pay closer attention to these moments, to notice the human side of every interaction, and to never underestimate the impact of a simple, genuine gesture. As he prepared for bed, he held on to the memory of the note in the evening, feeling gratitude for the waitress who had unknowingly given him more than just a message. She had given him a reminder of what really mattered. He drifted to sleep with a quiet smile, the words etched in his mind, knowing that this experience would stay with him, shaping not just his perspective, but the way he approached life and the people he encountered every day. The note had left him sitting in the car longer than he had planned, the city lights outside blending into the background as he thought about the words and the person who had written them. He realized that something so small, a few lines on a piece of paper, could carry more weight than most of the meetings, presentations, and decisions he made in a week. It was a reminder that human connection, even fleeting and unplanned, could touch someone in ways that lasted far beyond the moment. He replayed the evening in his mind, thinking about the waitress's care and attention. Every interaction, no matter how small, had been thoughtful. From the polite smile when he arrived to the way she returned to check on him just at the right times, each gesture had contributed to the experience. The note at the end had been the culmination of all that effort, a personal touch that transformed a simple meal into something memorable. As he drove home, he thought about how often he moved through life focusing on tasks, goals, and efficiency. He was always measuring success in numbers and achievements and milestones. Yet tonight had reminded him that there was something far more valuable than any title or accomplishment: the ability to notice, connect, and appreciate the people around him. It wasn't just about being successful in work or life. It was about the impact he could have on others through simple acts of presence and kindness. He reflected on the courage it had taken for the waitress to write the note. In her own small way, she had stepped out of the routine, taken a moment to express something genuine without expecting anything in return. That willingness to connect, to offer a piece of herself to someone she barely knew, had created a ripple effect. He realized that life was full of these moments, often unnoticed, but powerful in the way they influenced thoughts, feelings, and behavior. The note also made him think about his own approach to leadership and interaction. He considered how often he focused on outcomes, efficiency, and numbers, sometimes at the expense of personal connection. This small, heartfelt gesture had reminded him that leadership wasn't just about decisions and strategy. It was also about empathy, recognition, and acknowledging the humanity of everyone around him. He made a mental note to pay more attention to these small, meaningful moments in his own life and work. He thought about the countless employees, colleagues, and acquaintances he interacted with every day. How often did he pause to notice the effort someone had put into a task? How often did he express appreciation for someone's care or dedication? The note was a mirror, reflecting back the importance of recognition and the power of small gestures. He felt a quiet sense of responsibility to carry this lesson forward, not as a task or obligation, but as a natural way to live and lead. As he reached home, he sat in the driveway for a few moments, holding the folded note in his hand. He traced the edges and thought about the person who had written it, wondering about her life, her day, her thoughts. She had taken a small amount of time to connect with him in a way that left a lasting impression. It reminded him that every person has the power to make someone else's day better, to create a memory that lingers, and to leave a positive impact through something as simple as words. Entering his home, he put the note on the kitchen counter, a visible reminder of the evening. He thought about the layers of meaning it carried. It wasn't about flattery or recognition. It was about authenticity, sincerity, and human connection. He realized that these were qualities he valued deeply, yet sometimes overlooked in the busyness of life. The note had reminded him of the importance of slowing down, noticing the people around him, and taking small moments to express appreciation. He settled into his chair, still thinking about the waitress and the words she had written. He imagined her day, the other guests she had served, and the challenges she might face. Her gesture was a reminder that people carry experiences, emotions, and intentions that often go unnoticed. It was a call to see beyond the surface, to acknowledge the effort and care that others contribute, and to appreciate the humanity in every interaction. The CEO realized that the note had not only affected him, but also had the potential to influence how he interacted with the world. It had shifted his perspective, reminding him that even small gestures could carry profound meaning. A smile, a kind word, or a moment of attention could create connections that were far more impactful than material success. This understanding gave him a quiet sense of purpose, an awareness that he could contribute positively to the lives of others in ways that were meaningful and lasting. He reflected on the evening in its entirety, the anticipation of the meal, the care of the staff, the presentation of the food, and ultimately the handwritten note. Each element had combined to create a memorable experience, not because of extravagance or luxury, but because of attention, intention, and human connection. He understood that experiences like this were rare, but they were also a reminder of the kind of world he wanted to help create. One where people noticed each other, valued each other, and took the time to express genuine appreciation. He considered how he could apply this lesson in practical ways. Perhaps it was as simple as acknowledging a team member's effort, leaving a note for someone who had gone the extra mile, or taking a moment to listen more closely to those around him. The impact of these small acts, he realized, could be transformative, creating a culture of kindness and recognition that went beyond any single gesture. The note also prompted reflection on his own emotional awareness. In the pursuit of goals, he often overlooked the feelings and experiences of those around him. The sincerity of the waitress's words had awakened a sensitivity he sometimes neglected, reminding him that leadership and success were intertwined with empathy, understanding, and human connection. As the night deepened, he felt a sense of calm that had eluded him for weeks. The lesson of the note lingered not as a fleeting thought but as a meaningful insight. It reminded him that life was composed of countless small moments, each with the potential to create impact, foster connection, and bring joy. He knew that carrying this awareness into everyday life could change not only his interactions, but also the experiences of those he encountered. Finally, he placed the note in a small frame on his desk, a physical reminder of the evening, the lesson, and the human connection it represented. It was more than a keepsake. It was a symbol of the power of genuine interaction, the value of noticing and appreciating others, and the importance of humility and empathy in both personal and professional life. He went to bed that night feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The evening had been about more than a meal. It had been about recognition, connection, and understanding. The simple act of a waitress writing a note had left a profound impression on him, one that he would carry forward in his decisions, interactions, and daily life. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures had the greatest impact, and that kindness, attention, and human connection were the true measures of meaningful success. The next morning, he woke with the memory of the previous evening still vivid in his mind. The words on the note, though simple, had left an impression that lingered far beyond what he expected. It wasn't just about being appreciated or recognized. It was about understanding the value of small, thoughtful gestures and the impact they could have on someone's day. He reflected on how he could incorporate this lesson into his own life, both personally and professionally. As he prepared for the day, he thought about his interactions at work. He remembered the countless times he had walked past people, focusing solely on tasks and deadlines, without pausing to notice the effort and dedication of those around him. The note from the waitress had been a gentle reminder that human connection mattered just as much as accomplishments. He resolved to change this, starting with the simplest acts of acknowledgement and appreciation. Driving into the city, he considered how he could approach his team differently. Instead of just reviewing numbers and results, he could take the time to recognize individual contributions, to offer genuine praise, and to make people feel seen and valued. The note had reminded him that recognition wasn't about grand gestures or rewards. It was about authenticity, thoughtfulness, and the willingness to connect on a human level. Throughout the day, he noticed details he might have overlooked before: the way a receptionist greeted visitors, the quiet diligence of an assistant organizing schedules, the efforts of employees who worked behind the scenes to keep the company running smoothly. He made a conscious effort to acknowledge them, offering a word of thanks or a nod of appreciation. Each interaction, though small, felt meaningful, and he realized that the simple act of noticing someone could have a profound effect. During a meeting later in the day, he found himself reflecting on the impact of human connection and leadership. He spoke to his team about the importance of empathy, attention to detail, and recognizing the contributions of others. He shared a version of his experience from the restaurant not to boast, but to illustrate the power of small gestures and thoughtful communication. His team listened attentively, and he noticed how a simple story could inspire others to be more aware of the human side of their interactions. He also thought about the broader implications of the lesson. In a world often driven by speed, efficiency, and competition, it was easy to overlook the people around us. Yet the note from the waitress had reminded him that even brief moments of kindness, acknowledgement, and genuine attention could create ripples that extended far beyond the immediate moment. He resolved to be more intentional in his daily life, seeking opportunities to uplift, encourage, and connect with those around him. Later that week, he found himself thinking again about the waitress. He wondered about her life, her daily routine, and the circumstances that had led her to write that note. He felt a quiet gratitude toward her, realizing that her small act of courage and thoughtfulness had influenced him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He made a mental note to carry that spirit forward, to honor the lesson she had unknowingly taught him. At work, he began implementing subtle changes in how he interacted with colleagues and employees. He paused longer in conversations, asked questions about their experiences, and offered praise when it was deserved. These small adjustments, inspired by the note, created a noticeable difference in the atmosphere. People seemed more engaged, more appreciated, and more willing to contribute their best. He realized that leadership was not just about decisions and strategy, but also about creating an environment where people felt seen and valued. He also applied the lesson to his personal life. In his interactions with friends, family, and acquaintances, he became more attentive, more mindful of the impact of his words and actions. He discovered that small gestures, a thoughtful note, a kind word, a moment of genuine attention, could deepen relationships and create lasting positive impressions. The experience at the restaurant had expanded his perspective, reminding him that kindness and human connection were central to a fulfilling life. As weeks turned into months, the memory of the note remained a guiding influence. Whenever he faced a busy day, stressful decision, or challenging situation, he recalled the impact of that simple gesture. It reminded him to slow down, to observe, and to appreciate the people and moments that often went unnoticed. This awareness became a part of his daily routine, shaping the way he led, communicated, and connected with others. He even began sharing the story with friends and colleagues, not as a tale of personal recognition, but as an example of the power of human connection. Each time he recounted the evening, he emphasized the courage, thoughtfulness, and authenticity behind the note. The story resonated with others, inspiring them to consider the ways they could impact someone's day through small, meaningful gestures. The CEO realized that the lesson from that evening was not confined to a single moment or a single interaction. It was a lifelong reminder that life was full of opportunities to make a difference, often in ways that seemed minor but were profoundly impactful. He understood that success was not measured solely by achievements or status, but by the ability to foster genuine human connections and leave a positive impression on those around him. He also began reflecting on the importance of gratitude. Just as he had been affected by the note, he realized that expressing appreciation could uplift others in ways that were lasting and meaningful. He made a habit of acknowledging contributions, celebrating small victories, and expressing sincere thanks, both at work and in personal relationships. This approach created a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same and fostering a culture of recognition and kindness. One evening, he found himself back in the same neighborhood where the restaurant was located. He walked past the restaurant, remembering the experience and the note that had changed his perspective. He felt a quiet sense of connection to the waitress, knowing that her thoughtful gesture had left a lasting impact. Though he never expected to meet her again, the memory of her kindness remained vivid, a constant reminder of the power of human connection. He reflected on how the experience had influenced his understanding of empathy, leadership, and life in general. He realized that being attentive to others, acknowledging their efforts, and expressing appreciation were not just niceties, but essential aspects of meaningful relationships and effective leadership. The note had sparked a change in him, one that affected not only his own perspective but also the lives of those around him. As the months went by, he continued to integrate these lessons into his life. He noticed changes in the way people responded to him, the depth of his relationships, and the atmosphere in his workplace. Small gestures of kindness and recognition, inspired by a simple note, had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the initial moment. He also took time to reflect on the unpredictability of life and the beauty of unexpected connections. The note had come from someone he barely knew in a situation that seemed ordinary at the time. Yet it had left an impact that was extraordinary. He realized that life was full of such moments and that being open to them, receptive, and appreciative was essential to experiencing the richness of human interaction. In the end, the experience at the restaurant became more than just a memory of a pleasant meal. It became a lesson in humanity, empathy, and connection. The handwritten note, simple and sincere, had taught him the value of recognizing others, expressing appreciation, and embracing the small but meaningful gestures that shape life. It had reminded him that even in a busy, demanding world, moments of authenticity and kindness could leave lasting impressions and inspire positive change. As he continued to navigate his life, both professionally and personally, he carried the lesson with him. He remembered the waitress's courage and sincerity, the care and thoughtfulness behind a simple act, and the profound impact it had on his perspective. It was a reminder that life's most meaningful experiences often came from unexpected places, and that the true measure of success was not only in achievements, but in the ability to touch the lives of others through genuine human connection. And so, every time he faced a choice, whether large or small, he asked himself if he could approach it with attention, empathy, and thoughtfulness. The lesson of the note became a guiding principle, a quiet force that influenced his decisions, his interactions, and the way he lived. In this way, the simple gesture of a waitress writing a note on a bill became a catalyst for lasting change, a story of connection, humanity, and the enduring power of small acts of kindness.